let's talk like troubles with like orgasm, sexual pain, intercourse,
Sure.
things like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then we'll move on to the urine leakage.
Okay. So
Yeah.
in particular, especially with like intercourse pain related stuff, it's going to be different than I'm really weak and I just can't contract. So I can't get an orgasm because there's like nothing happening versus like I'm really tight, but I'm not having very strong orgasms because again, I don't have much motion. So similar ideas, but the treatments are very different for both.
Okay.
So with weakness, obviously it'd be a strength training program. Those ones are pretty more straightforward. You'd want to work on strengthening your booty, make sure you know how to engage your pelvic floor. So that might be a time for an isolated Kegel exercise in some of those cases in the beginning until that muscle is now, oh, I know how to find it. And then you got to tie it into functional stuff right away.
Okay.
The more complex one though, is when we're dealing with tension. So if somebody has a tight pelvic floor, it often is masking weakness in those cases. If they're having pain with sex, a change in orgasm ability, right? So they used to be able to, but now they can't. And they're just extra tight and having a hard time releasing and or pain after orgasm, which also happens with that. We have to teach it how to relax. And so often as a pelvic floor PT, we're giving what's called a down training program. So we're trying to teach those muscles how to lengthen, how to relax. And it's not quite as easy as like stretching out your hamstring or
you have to
doing
think,
like some,
right?
It's different.
Yeah.
It's a lot of brain thinking in the beginning if you've never done it. And you're like, I didn't even know I had these muscles. Like I just thought it was a pee hole and a poop hole. And I didn't even know. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's just, it's a big learning curve. It's hard work in your head, not so hard. It's not like going to make you sweat. Okay.
Yes.
But stretching, if I had to give you kind of a general thing for people to do, develop a good hip mobility, back mobility, pelvic mobility, stretching routine, and incorporate breath work with it. That's probably the easiest thing to add in.
Okay.
And try to unclench. Like if you were to tighten your pelvic floor, like kind of squeeze it, try to do that Kegel.
Yeah.
And then if you're
doing it right now, can you tell?
Does it relax? You shouldn't be able to tell. If you can see it, you're doing it wrong.
Okay.
Yeah. So you should be able to relax it. And if you're like, I'm not really sure if I relaxed, that could be a sign that there's either a severe weakness where you didn't squeeze it at all, which is less common in the age demographic that typically is in more fitness, active fitness. But if you can't really feel like you're relaxing, it's probably not relaxing or taking a really long time to release.
Okay.
And that's a sign of tension.
I know this might be a basic question, but would something like working with someone as yourself for this type of issue and incorporating those exercises, I guess, mentally with something like yoga, would that be okay? Yeah.
I often, especially if people love yoga and if people hate yoga, we find something else. But if they do, we just modify certain yoga poses and say, hey, why don't you work on these? With yoga, it depends on the type you practice, right? There's different types of yogas. There's like the more meditative, long posture holding versions. And there's more aerobic, quicker movement postures. Typically, we're looking for something kind of in between, right? So we want to be able to hold it, but we don't need to sit there for 10 minutes or 5 minutes in one posture.
Yeah.
It should be comfortable. If it's like, whoa, this feels really tight, I'm having a hard time relaxing, there is no way your pelvic floor will be relaxing. And you're going to be like, oh, this is really intense, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it needs to be something that's just intense enough. You're like, wow, I really feel that, but light enough that you can relax into it.
Okay.
Whatever the stretch is, whether it's yoga pose, hamstring stretch, whatever. Yeah.
And then let's talk on, unless there was anything you wanted to add there, I was going to just move into the urinary.
As a general, I would say that's probably, there's a lot more, but it's
for sure
pretty individual on what people are experiencing and whether it's vaginal penetration or anal penetration. There's a difference on that too, and what type of treatment is included. So,
okay. Now moving on to something like urine leakage, dribbling, things like that with high impact sneezing. What are your thoughts on that? What are your go-tos?
Let's break again, because again, you can have it from weakness and you can have it from too much tension. So from a weakness standpoint, I would say if you are needing to make sure that you train your pelvic floor to turn on during those activities, start with something easier than that motion. So let's say you normally jump rope for 5-10 minutes, whatever the length of time is. Start with maybe some jumping jacks, and then you can pause in between as you work to train that muscle how to engage. So as long as you know how to do a Kegel, which sidebar, over 50% of women who think they know how aren't doing them correctly per research.
Okay.
Okay.
Should we,
so as long as you
do like a brief
correctly.
how to?
We can try.
Okay.
I'll give you verbal instruction. However, even with verbal instruction per research, most, at least around 50%, still are not doing them correctly. But I'll tell you this.
Okay.
If you were to insert your finger or a partner's finger, but so that you could feel it yourself,
yes,
into your vaginal canal, you should feel not just a, trying to show you with my hand, my hands, which doesn't help on a podcast.
Oh, this will be on YouTube. This will be on YouTube.
Perfect.
Yes.
It does not help. Okay.
Yeah.
You should feel a squeeze and a lift in.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And that's part that people, so there's different grades of strengthening or strength of the pelvic floor. To summarize it really generally, when it's just kind of like a surface, you kind of feel this tightening, but this squeeze just right on the surface. That shows that muscle is weak.
Okay.
It'd feel a pretty strong squeeze. I mean, obviously it's not like your sphincter. It's not going to feel like that, but you should feel like, oh, I feel it's like definitely tightening down on me. And you should feel like it's trying to pull your finger inside.
Okay. So like an elevator up.
Like an elevator up.
Yeah.
Yep. It should pull up and in.
Okay.
If you don't feel the up and the in part, that will definitely say, either I'm not doing this correctly or I have a weakness.
Okay.
Or potentially also could be you have a tightness. That's the trick of the tension issue that makes it tough. But from a weakness standpoint, as long as you can relax it all the way and you can feel some sort of squeeze, you're probably doing Kegels, whether or not you need some extra help to make sure you're doing full contractions. It'd be like trying to do a bicep curl and all doing like these, baby.
Right.
There's room for that. You might need that in some cases, but we might want to strengthen through full range more often than not. Right. Yeah. Okay. So that's Kegel. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Up and in.
Very up and in. Yes.
Okay. It's helpful to do it on an exhale too.
Oh.
So you breathe in and then you breathe out.
Oh, I just did one. It was magical.
Yeah. Up and in motion. Perfect.
Yes.
And the reason why that works with the exhale is because it's tied so closely to your diaphragm. And how your diaphragm
Makes
moves.
sense.
So it's like a piston. Diaphragm goes out, pelvic floor pulls up, push your air out, your diaphragm has to move up. So it kind of just assists everything in the movement. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
There you go. If in doubt, see somebody and make sure you're doing it correctly. Yeah. Okay. So we were chatting about
bladder, some like exercises, some jump
impact.
jacks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as long as you know how to do a Kegel, use that Kegel functionally. Make sure you engage that pelvic floor. Let's say I want to do a box jump. Maybe it's a smaller box jump than I have done, but I'm going to breathe in. I'm going to breathe out. I'm going to get my pelvic floor, that Kegel, engaged. And then I'm going to do my jump. And then I'm going to relax. And I'm going to see, did I hold it or is it already down? Did I hold it up that whole time? And then if I release it afterwards, does it drop back down? Awesome. That's great. That's what we want to do as we train. And more impact, we work our way up just like you would building any other muscle, right? You just add more and more load to that pelvic floor. And then eventually you're doing jump ropes, no problem, right?
Okay.
So you have to train for what you want to do. Just like you would with a butt, a leg, an arm, an ab, or
Makes
whatever.
Sense.
Yeah.
Yes.